All right. Let's talk about something a little uncomfortable, but something we need to address. Throughout history, Muslim societies have had, shall we say, a complicated relationship with progress. New ideas, new technologies, they often tend to be met with resistance, particularly from religious authorities. It's like clockwork. Someone invents a printing press and suddenly everyone's worried about rogue Quran copies. But here's the thing, this resistance, it usually doesn't age well. Eventually, the opposition fades, acceptance creeps in, and we're left playing catch-up. Think about it. The printing press, women's education, photography, television, the list goes on. All initially met with skepticism, even outright rejection, often in the name of protecting faith and tradition. But guess what? We adapted. We found ways to reconcile these advancements with our values. So why the initial pushback? And more importantly, what can we learn from these historical patterns of resistance and eventual acceptance? That's what we're going to unpack today. We're going to dive deep into this phenomenon, explore the reasons behind it, and hopefully learn something about ourselves along the way, because let's be real, this pattern of resistance has real-world consequences. It impacts our progress, our development, and our place in the world. Imagine, if you will, the world before the printing press. Knowledge, especially religious texts, were painstakingly copied by hand. It was a slow, laborious process controlled by a select few. Enter the printing press, a machine capable of mass-producing texts. Revolutionary, right? Not so fast, said some religious scholars. They saw it as a threat, a tool for spreading misinformation and potentially distorting sacred scriptures. The fear. Imagine a world with unauthorized Qurans, riddled with errors, chaos, the very fabric of Islam unraveling. But the thing about knowledge is, it wants to be free. Slowly, the printing press gained a foothold. By the 19th century, it was instrumental in sparking a renaissance in the Muslim world. Books became more accessible, literacy rates soared, and a new era of intellectual and cultural exchange blossomed. Looking back, the initial resistance seems almost quaint, doesn't it? It's a reminder that even the most transformative innovations can face an uphill battle against deeply ingrained beliefs and a fear of the unknown. But it also underscores the resilience of human curiosity and the inevitability of progress. For centuries, education, particularly for women, was seen through a very specific lens in many Muslim societies. It focused on religious instruction, household management, the essentials for a righteous wife and mother. But the idea of women accessing broader education, pursuing higher learning, entering professional fields, that was a whole different ballgame. The resistance often stemmed from concerns about disrupting traditional gender roles, the sanctity of the family structure, and the potential for women to be exposed to corrupting influences outside the home. What will become of our daughters, they cried. Who will raise the children? What will happen to the moral fabric of society? But here's the irony. Educating women didn't weaken society, it strengthened it. As more women gained access to education, they became active participants in their communities, contributing to economic growth, social progress, and intellectual discourse. The fight for female literacy was a long and arduous one, but it yielded incredible results. Today, we see Muslim women excelling in every field imaginable, from science and medicine to politics and the arts. They are doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, and leaders, shattering stereotypes and proving that education is not a threat to their faith, but rather a pathway to empowerment. Let's be real, Islam has a complicated relationship with images. The whole no idolatry thing, kind of a big deal. So when photography burst onto the scene in the 19th century, it was met with predictable apprehension. Scholars grappled with its implications. Was it permissible to capture the likeness of Allah's creations? Were we crossing a line, venturing into the territory of idol worship? Fatwas, those non-binding but influential legal opinions, flew back and forth. Some declared photography strictly haram, fearing it would lead people astray. Others, however, saw its potential. A tool for documentation, for education, for capturing the beauty of the world around us. As with many things, time tempered the initial anxieties. Today, photography is ubiquitous in Muslim societies. We use it to document pilgrimages, to share family milestones, to capture the breathtaking diversity of the Muslim world. Even mosques, once hesitant, now often feature stunning architectural photography. From airwaves to Islam waves, the rise of Islamic broadcasting. The golden age of radio and television. A time when families gathered around the magic box, captivated by moving pictures and the voices emanating from this newfangled device. But in many Muslim communities, this sense of wonder was tinged with trepidation. The concern, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly the content. Religious leaders worried about the potential for these powerful mediums to spread immorality, to distract from religious duties, to expose people, and particularly young minds, to the evils of the Western world. People realized these mediums could be used for good, even for spreading the message of Islam. Well, fast forward to today, and we have entire satellite channels dedicated to Islamic content. What was once feared as a corrupting influence became a powerful tool for religious education and outreach. From digital devil to Islamic resource, the internet, that vast digital landscape of cat videos, online shopping, and a whole lot of information, some of it good, some of it not so much. Naturally, this unprecedented access to information, both beneficial and potentially harmful, set off alarm bells in many Muslim communities. The internet, some argued, was a breeding ground for vice, a distraction from religious obligations, a digital Trojan horse poised to infiltrate our homes and corrupt our youth. But as the internet's grip on modern life tightened, something interesting happened. Muslims, like everyone else, realized this digital frontier was here to stay, and rather than shunning it, many decided to engage with it, to harness its power for good. Science or sacrilege, reconciling faith and modernity. Here's a thought: what happens when ancient wisdom encounters cutting-edge science? It's a question that has sparked debate and introspection within Muslim societies for centuries. As advancements in fields like medicine, astronomy, and physics challenged long-held beliefs, some saw a fundamental clash between faith and reason. How can we reconcile the Quran's teachings with Darwin's theory of evolution, they asked. Do scientific discoveries invalidate our religious beliefs? Fear and uncertainty swirled, leading some to reject modern scientific advancements altogether, clinging tightly to traditional interpretations of Scripture. But others recognized that faith and science are not mutually exclusive. They argued that the pursuit of knowledge, in all its forms, is a noble endeavor, encouraged in Islam. They pointed to verses in the Quran that encourage observation, reflection, and the study of the natural world as evidence of God's wisdom. Over time, a more nuanced understanding emerged. Muslims began to integrate aspects of Western education into their own systems, fostering a new generation of scientists, engineers, and medical professionals. Islamic scholarship too adapted, exploring ways to reconcile scientific discoveries with religious teachings, emphasizing the harmony rather than the conflict between the two. Beyond hijab, navigating women's rights in the 21st century. Let's talk about women's rights in Islam. A topic that tends to spark passionate debate and, let's be real, a whole lot of misunderstanding. As the global women's rights movement gained momentum, many Muslim societies found themselves grappling with how to reconcile these calls for equality with their own cultural norms. Some viewed the push for women's rights as a Western import, a threat to traditional family structures and Islamic values. They pointed to interpretations of Islamic texts that emphasized women's roles as wives and mothers, arguing that granting them greater freedoms would disrupt the social order and lead to moral decline. But here's the thing: Islam, at its core, values justice and equity for all. Many scholars and activists within Muslim communities began to challenge these restrictive interpretations. Islam and secularism, can they coexist? Secularism, it's a word that carries a lot of baggage, particularly in the context of Islam. For some, it conjures images of godlessness, of societies that have abandoned religion altogether in favor of purely worldly pursuits. And in many Muslim communities, the idea of separating religion from the state was met with skepticism, even outright rejection. The resistance often stemmed from the belief that Islam is not just a religion, but a complete way of life. Their concerns stemmed from a deep-seated belief that secularism would inevitably lead to the erosion of Islamic values and the loss of religious identity. But others argued that a secular state doesn't necessarily equate to an anti-religious state. They pointed to the fact that secularism, in its ideal form, guarantees freedom of religion for all citizens, protecting the rights of both the majority and minority faith groups. Family matters. When God's will meets family planning. Children, as they say, are a blessing. But what happens when the ability to have children intersects with concerns about overpopulation, economic hardship, or maternal health? In many Muslim communities, the idea of limiting family size was initially met with resistance, rooted in both religious and cultural beliefs. Some argued that it was an affront to God's will, interfering with the natural order and rejecting the blessings that children bring. Who are we to question God's plan, they argued. Children are a gift, and we should welcome them with open arms, regardless of the circumstances. But as awareness of the challenges posed by rapid population growth and the importance of maternal health increased, a more nuanced understanding began to emerge. Religious scholars and medical professionals started to engage in dialogue, exploring ways to reconcile family planning with Islamic teachings. Sports, they're supposed to be about competition, camaraderie, and pushing the limits of human potential. But in the context of Islam, sports, particularly for women, have often become a battleground for cultural norms, religious interpretations, and the ever-present tension between tradition and modernity. The resistance often stemmed from concerns about modesty, gender mixing, and the potential for sports to distract from religious obligations. Why do our women need to compete in public, exposing their bodies and interacting with men, some argued? Shouldn't their focus be on their families, their homes, their religious duties? The idea of women wearing shorts or athletic wear, competing alongside men, or even just participating in sports that were seen as overly masculine was met with disapproval, often justified by citing interpretations of Islamic teachings on modesty and gender roles. But others pointed out that Islam encourages both men and women to maintain their physical health and well-being. They argued that sports could be a powerful tool for promoting discipline, teamwork, and a healthy lifestyle, values that are all emphasized in Islam. Imagine this: you have the power to save a life, to offer a dying patient a second chance. Now imagine that this act of compassion is met with resistance, rooted in religious and cultural beliefs. This is the complex reality surrounding organ donation in many Muslim communities. The initial hesitation often stemmed from a lack of clear guidance on the issue within traditional Islamic jurisprudence. The concept of organ donation was relatively new, and many struggled to reconcile it with Islamic teachings about the sanctity of the human body and the prohibition against mutilation. Is it permissible to remove organs from a deceased person, even if it means saving another life, they wondered? Will this interfere with God's plan, disrupt the soul's journey in the afterlife, or disrespect the deceased? These were weighty questions with no easy answers. But as medical technology advanced and the need for organ transplants grew, Muslim scholars and medical experts began to delve deeper into Islamic texts and principles. Many argued that the principle of saving a life in Islam takes precedence over almost all other considerations. Marriage. It's a sacred institution in Islam, meant to be a union of love, companionship, and mutual support. While Islam doesn't explicitly prohibit marriage at a young age, it emphasizes the importance of consent, maturity, and the well-being of both spouses. The resistance to setting a minimum age for marriage often stemmed from the belief that it was interfering with parental rights and cultural traditions. But as awareness of the detrimental effects of child marriage on girls' education, health, and overall well-being grew, so too did the calls for reform within Muslim communities. Activists and scholars began to challenge these harmful practices, emphasizing the importance of protecting children's rights and ensuring their physical and emotional readiness for marriage. So what have we learned from this whirlwind tour of resistance and eventual acceptance? I think it reveals something crucial about Muslim societies. We adapt, we evolve. But the process, man, it can be messy. It often takes longer than it should, and sometimes we miss out on opportunities because of that initial hesitation. The key takeaway here isn't to shy away from our past or pretend these debates didn't happen. It's about recognizing the patterns, understanding the root causes, and using that knowledge to make more informed decisions about the future. We need our scholars, our thinkers, our community leaders to be more than just gatekeepers of tradition. We need them to be proactive guides, helping us navigate the complexities of a rapidly changing world while staying true to our values. It's about cultivating critical thinking, encouraging independent inquiry, and fostering open and honest dialogue between our religious leaders and the community, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing: a brighter future for ourselves, our children, and the global Muslim community. And that, my friends, requires a willingness to embrace change, to challenge outdated interpretations, and to engage with the world around us with both confidence and compassion.